You think I'm in control here? I'm nothing but a goddamn front. Cerruti's run everything since the day Tim was shot.
Hollywood's corporate machine spent a decade trying to erase films they couldn't control, using legal sabotage, distribution, manipulation, and deliberate neglect to bury masterpieces that threatened their bottom line. The 70s saw films emerge from production chaos that studios couldn't contain, directors fighting corporate seizure by hiding negatives in freezers and garages, and masterpieces locked in pharmaceutical vaults by companies that had no interest in preserving what they accidentally owned. The rights to The Heartbreak Kid, a comedy about a man who ditches his new wife on their honeymoon to chase a blonde college student back to Minnesota, currently belong to a pharmaceutical giant. As absurd as it sounds, and somehow perfectly encapsulating how corporations treat art like forgotten inventory, the company briefly dabbled in film production in the early 70s, then dissolved the division and just left masterpieces buried in their portfolio with zero interest in licensing or restoration. Standard operating procedure for a company that makes more money selling aspirin than dealing with film preservation bureaucracy.
You want a bite? Huh?
Thank you.
For decades, fans have been forced to hunt for out-of-print DVDs selling for $80 or rely on low-quality YouTube bootlegs, a pharmaceutical company's accidental erasure of American comedy. Director Elaine May cast her own daughter Jeannie Berlin as the rejected wife, pushing her into cringe-inducing scenes that earned Berlin an Oscar nomination but cemented May's reputation as difficult, ensuring the film had no champion during its decades in distribution limbo, proving that even critical success means nothing when a pharma exec forgets you exist.
What are you doing? Come on, put that down.
Nobody can see.
Come on, truck drivers can see.
Esquire magazine published the entire screenplay for Two Lane Blacktop, a minimalist road movie about two drifters racing their '55 Chevy across America for pink slips in its April 1971 issue, declaring it the movie of the year, months before release. A preemptive kiss of death, the studio needed to bury it. The magazine overpromised a masterpiece that general audiences found too slow and philosophical. So when the film didn't immediately perform like Easy Rider, the studio pulled it from distribution after only a few weeks, then acted like Monte Hellman had personally betrayed them by making exactly the film they greenlit. Director Hellman cast James Taylor and Dennis Wilson, despite neither having acting experience, refusing to show them the full script to keep their performances blank and naturalistic, a method so traumatizing Taylor never starred in another feature film. 3 identical Chevys were built for the film, a significant chunk of the total $850,000 budget, then treated as corporate junk after filming. One car ending up as Harrison Ford's ride in American Graffiti. Physical proof that studios can't recognize value even when it's sitting in their own parking lot.
Excuse me, sir. I'm trying to catch the bus back to San Francisco. Can you help me out?
The production of Blue Collar, a film about 3 auto workers who rob their union safe and find evidence of organized crime instead of cash, is legendary for being one of the most hostile sets in Hollywood history. A predictable outcome when you cast 3 volatile actors and tell them to play friends on the verge of betrayal. Director Paul Schrader was caught in a literal war between Richard Pryor, Harvey Keitel, and Yaphet Kotto, who despised each other so much they refused to be in the same room unless cameras were rolling. Tensions boiled over during a scene where Keitel and Pryor were meant to argue. A real fight broke out, and Pryor's bodyguard reportedly brandished a gun at Keitel before Pryor punched him in the face during a take. Textbook method acting nightmare that nobody bothered preventing. The physical toll on Schrader was so extreme, he suffered a nervous breakdown and a mid-production heart attack. Filmed in a real checker cab plant in Detroit with a lean $2.5 million budget. Universal executives hated the film's bleak ending, showing worker solidarity being destroyed, so they sabotaged its release with a limited run, burying a pro-labor masterpiece because it told the truth about corporate union collusion.
I done blew $20 in ballpoint pens.
Hey, be reasonable, see?
Huh? Reasonable? Man, thick my bitch.
One of the strangest movies out this summer is Winter Kills, which is based on Richard Condon's thriller about the assassination of President Kennedy. Well, he's not called Kennedy in the movie, of course, but you don't have to be a genius to put this thing together. Jeff Bridges stars as the younger brother of a murdered president, and John Huston plays the millionaire patriarch of the family.
The production of Winter Kills, a political conspiracy thriller about a man investigating his brother's presidential assassination 19 years later, is arguably the most financially chaotic in the history of American cinema. Financed by 2 men who claimed to be wealthy entrepreneurs, but were actually using the film as a front for a massive marijuana smuggling operation, the kind of irony nobody could write into a script.
We will hear your testimony.
I shot President Keegan.
During filming, the production was suddenly swarmed by the FBI. Robert Sterling was later sentenced to 40 years in prison for drug trafficking, and Leonard Goldberg was found murdered, handcuffed to a bed, and shot in the head in a New York apartment while the production sat in a state of bankruptcy. With the primary financiers either in prison or dead, the crew was left stranded with millions in unpaid salaries, and the film was placed in a legal black hole so toxic that actors including Jeff Bridges were advised to walk away. Yet director William Richards spent the next 2 years desperately trying to secure clean money to finish the project, refusing to let corporate chaos win. Elizabeth Taylor agreed to play a pivotal non-speaking role as a high society madam, but because the production ran out of money mid-shoot, she was never paid her agreed-upon salary. So her agents held her film footage and lavish costumes hostage, perfectly in line with Hollywood, where everything becomes a negotiation even when the producer's been murdered. To get the film back on track, Richard had to film a separate low-budget comedy called The American Success Company during a hiatus, using the same cast and crew just to generate enough cash to ransom the Winter Kills footage back from the labs, turning filmmaking into a literal hostage negotiation.
Put it back.
You giving me ultimatums?
The personal toll on Richard was immense, spending years of his life and his own savings to navigate a secret blacklist created by the film's association with organized crime, all to ensure Taylor's performance didn't end up in a dumpster. The sheer scope of the disaster, a film about political conspiracy being financed by actual criminals, created a masterpiece so dangerous that even completing it felt like a crime. Even after the film was finally rescued from legal limbo, it faced a final act of corporate sabotage from its distributor, Avco Embassy, textbook studio panic disguised as business strategy. The film opened to rave reviews and massive ticket sales during its first week in 1979, but just as it was poised to become a hit, the studio inexplicably pulled the film from theaters across the country, then acted like the box office failure was inevitable. Richard claimed the film's plot, featuring a patriarch played by John Huston, who bore a striking resemblance to Joseph Kennedy, hit too close to home for certain powerful figures in the industry, and the studio's walkout from their own movie suggests he was right.
Information's power, and now we're going to use it to get to the bottom of this thing.
The film grossed only a fraction of its $6.5 million budget, deleted from public view for over a decade, with some industry insiders alleging the corporate purge was a deliberate attempt to bury a film that mocked the American political establishment too effectively. It wasn't until a 2023 4K restoration that the full unedited masterpiece was finally made accessible, proof that even marijuana smugglers and murder couldn't erase what corporate America wanted forgotten. Director Elaine May shot a staggering 1.4 million feet of film for Mikey and Nicky, a story about two childhood friends spending one claustrophobic night together while a mob contract hangs over one of their heads, roughly 100 times the length of the finished movie. Paramount's first warning that she wasn't playing by their rules. May famously kept 3 cameras running simultaneously to capture improvisational sparks between Peter Falk and John Cassavetes, often refusing to yell cut even when actors walked off set, turning production into an endurance test nobody signed up for. When Paramount Pictures, led by Chairman Barry Diller, eventually lost patience with a 3-year editing process and attempted to seize the footage, May allegedly engaged in corporate espionage by hiding several reels of the master negative in a friend's garage, and, according to industry legend, even in a freezer to prevent the studio from butchering her work. The conflict became so litigious that Paramount effectively blacklisted May for over a decade. The studio's retaliation was to dump the film into a handful of theaters with almost zero marketing, then use its failure as a tax write-off, proving studios would rather destroy art than admit they were wrong.
Don't you wish your mother was alive?
Of course I wish my mother was alive.
While Steven Spielberg was coming off the record-breaking success of Jaws, Columbia Pictures was in terminal financial ruin, and the studio's survival was pinned entirely on Close Encounters, a film about an ordinary man whose life unravels after a UFO encounter leaves him obsessed with reaching a mysterious mountain in Wyoming. The definition of a corporate hostage situation where one film determines whether an entire studio survives. The budget escalated from $2.8 million to $19.4 million, making it the most expensive production in Columbia's history. And had the film flopped, the studio would have faced bankruptcy, so they forced Spielberg to rush it into a November 1977 release despite his pleas for more time. The production used an abandoned World War II airplane hangar in Mobile, Alabama, so vast it created its own internal weather system, with humidity from the Gulf Coast causing literal clouds to form and rain to fall on set during filming, inevitable when ambition collides with physics. Assistants with sponges constantly wiped sweat off over 150 extras working under 90 high-intensity arc lamps and temperatures reaching 135 degrees. 3 years after release, Columbia offered Spielberg a deal to finish his director's cut, only if he filmed the interior of the mothership. Corporate extortion disguised as creative collaboration.
I need you to see something with me. It's really important.
Director Robert Altman utilized a revolutionary 24-track recording system for Nashville, a sprawling ensemble film following 24 characters through the country music industry over 5 chaotic days leading up to a political rally. But this technical ambition led to a devastating incident when an assistant sound mixer recorded actress Karen Black's raw a cappella vocal across all available audio tracks instead of layering it with instruments, the audio engineering equivalent of broadcasting someone's therapy session to the entire crew. When the footage played back during dailies in front of everyone, Black's naked voice filled the room and the actress reportedly exploded in embarrassment, leading to the staffer being fired on the spot. Though in a classic Altman twist, he was eventually rehired to finish the job because nobody else understood the system.
Thank you very much. And as most of you might have already noticed, we have a celebrity in the house with us tonight. And if we get our hands together, we might can get a song.
In a move that infuriated the actual Nashville establishment, Altman required his actors to write and perform their own musical material, with country legend Loretta Lynn so offended by the character Barbara Jean, widely seen as a parody of Lynn's own nervous breakdowns, that she refused to see the film for years. Paramount chairman Barry Diller was so confident in the film's success that he and ABC struck a deal to recut the footage into an unprecedented 6 to 8 hour miniseries. But when the film only made $10 million, Paramount scrapped the plans entirely, leaving entire musical numbers buried in vaults for decades.
I want you to study real hard because just remember, any one of you can grow up to be the president.
I always read the film critic for the Los Angeles Times, who was a good friend of mine. His name was Charles Champlin. When I opened the paper to his review of Sorcerer, it began with the phrase, "What went wrong?"
The centerpiece of Sorcerer, a nihilistic thriller about 4 desperate outcasts transporting leaking dynamite 200 miles through the South American jungle to extinguish an oil well fire, is the sequence where trucks cross a crumbling suspension bridge during a storm, and this single sequence became a production disaster of legendary proportions that proves directors will bankrupt themselves for one perfect shot. William Friedkin spent $1 million building a functional bridge over a river in the Dominican Republic, only to have the river dry up due to localized drought, so he ordered the bridge dismantled and rebuilt in Mexico at an additional cost of over $1 million, refusing to compromise even as costs spiraled out of control. During the Mexican jungle shoot, nearly half the crew contracted malaria, with Friedkin himself losing over 50 pounds due to severe malaria and jungle rot. When the film opened on the exact same weekend as Star Wars, it grossed less than $6 million domestically, effectively ending Friedkin's blank check era. The predictable outcome when you bet everything on gritty nihilism against space opera escapism.
The audience was getting younger and younger, and I had no idea.
For over 30 years, Sorcerer was effectively deleted from history due to a legal dispute between Universal and Paramount, forcing Friedkin to sue both studios just to find out who owned the film.
You bastard! What the fuck are you doing?
Wanda, a raw portrait of a drifting Pennsylvania woman who walks away from her children and becomes the reluctant accomplice to a nervous petty criminal, was a feat of extreme independence led by Barbara Loden, who wrote, directed, and starred in the film with a skeletal crew of just 4 people and a micro-budget of only $115,000. What filmmaking looks like when you bypass the corporate studio system entirely. Loden operated without permits, filming in real bars and bus stations using 16mm film stock, typically reserved for documentaries, refusing to use professional lighting and relying instead on the natural gloom of Pennsylvania coal country, turning budget limitations into aesthetic choices that Hollywood couldn't replicate with all their money.
You can do it.
I can't.
You can. You can.
I can't.
The personal toll was immense, acting as her own costume designer and location scout, often changing clothes in the back of a van. The guerrilla filmmaking dream until you realize it means the film lacks institutional support for wide release. Despite winning the International Critics Prize at the Venice Film Festival, Loden faced a secret blacklist within the Hollywood establishment upon her return, with male executives repulsed by the film's refusal to make Wanda a sympathetic or empowered heroine, proving the industry only wanted female stories if they followed approved narratives. Studios told her that her directorial style was too amateurish or unmarketable, and Elia Kazan later admitted he felt Loden's talent was smothered by an industry that only saw her as an actor, or the director's wife, a corporate rejection that effectively ended her directing career before it could truly begin. For decades, Wanda was on the verge of being deleted from history due to physical neglect. The master negative left in a state of decay in an unprotected laboratory because the film lacked a major studio distributor, the inevitable result when nobody profits from preservation. For years, the only way to see it was through faded, pinkish bootleg copies. It wasn't until the UCLA Film and Television Archive, with funding from the Film Foundation and a surprise grant from fashion house Gucci, stepped in that a restoration was possible, discovering the original negative was riddled with scratches and vinegar syndrome, nearly too far gone to save. This viral revelation of the film's near extinction spurred a global movement to reclaim Loden's work, proving that without the intervention of private donors, the corporate indifference of the 70s would have permanently erased one of the most important female voices in cinema. Loden died of cancer at age 48 without ever directing another feature, and Wanda became a tragic one-hit wonder, ultimately just one more victim of Hollywood's preferred method of dealing with films it couldn't control. The playbook was simple: bury it long enough, and people forget it existed. Murder the producer, lock the rights in a pharmaceutical vault, let the negatives rot in legal limbo. The studios spent decades betting you'd never find out what they tried to hide. Now you know, and that's exactly what they were afraid of.